So what is your message for why socialism doesn't work?
Because it goes against human nature. That's my conclusion. Like, humans are individuals, and we pursue what is good for us.
So Anna, thanks for taking a few minutes to chat with us for our Survivors of Socialism series. You had mentioned that you're from Venezuela originally, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was it that made you decide to end up moving to Canada?
Well, my country was going through a lot of economic stress. Actually, it was an humanitarian tragedy what ended up happening. Hyperinflation, scarcity, poverty, because in the end of the day, even if you are a professional, if you have a nice career, if you have a nice job, in the end, inflation is so bad that it consumes your currency, it consumes your salary. So imagine, I was a lawyer in Venezuela working for one of the most important telecommunication companies, and my salary was $30 USD per month.
Wow.
Like, that's not normal.
And so Venezuela is a socialist country.
Yes.
What were some of the changes that you saw that were just surprising to you, that the government would come in and do these things?
One of the changes is that I saw the government expropriating businesses. Like, I saw the Hugo Chavez government going after private businesses. And when people think about capitalism, they usually think about people like Elon Musk, you know, the multimillionaires with all this money. And it's like, no, they went even after the smaller businesses. I used to see Hugo Chavez on TV walking in the street, like, imagine the Prime Minister here in Ottawa, and coming like, oh yeah, that place expropriated, and that place expropriated on national TV.
Wow.
Like, if you do that, if you take productive businesses and you hand it out to people that don't know how to run a business, you are gonna run out of that product that they used to sell. And if you do that to thousands of businesses, that's gonna impact your economy and your production in a national level.
And it would also impact those who he didn't happen to point to that day, because they would get scared, wouldn't they, that someday he might walk down their street and decide they're gonna...
So many businesses and many also international corporations that I want to address this, they used to provide with employment opportunities to Venezuelans. They left. They ran away because they were like, no, this is gonna happen to us, we better leave. And they had the example of what happened in Cuba many years before, where they took American companies and then never compensated.
Yeah. And you had shared this anecdote about the government, I believe, taking over like a small appliance store and a bakery too, is that right?
Yes.
So, you know, I think about the government in Canada, how it often struggles with actually delivering services to the public. Services the government is supposed to be good at, handling passports, healthcare. The federal government can't even pay its employees the right amount of money every 2 weeks. It's been an ongoing issue for years. And then to have the government, you know, coming in and managing an appliance store and a bakery, it just sounds like a total disaster. But I guess the results speak for themselves, right? 6-7 million Venezuelans have fled because things are...
Exactly. You know that I love a quote that Milton Friedman has, that he says, like, if you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, you're going to run out of sand in a matter of a few years. Well, the government took over completely the oil company, put people in there, not because they were competent, but because they were loyal to their ideology. And in a matter of years, like, Venezuela, that is the country with the largest oil reserve in the world, had to import oil from other countries.
And that's what strikes me about Venezuela, is that it seems like it's a country with a lot of hardworking people. It's got a lot of good resources. It's blessed with oil. I believe some beautiful beaches in that too. Like, it seems
tourism.
Like tourism, right, and a lot of great tourism potential. And yet it's struggling. Like, a lot of countries would give their eye teeth for any of those.
Yes, well, what happens is that if you put all this territory under a bad management, that's what you're gonna get. Venezuela was a country that in the past received refugees. Refugees from other countries, like Chile, for example, when people were persecuted by Pinochet, many of these Chileans flew to Venezuela to seek refuge. And now Venezuelans are actually going to Chile, even by foot, to actually get a chance in living a normal life.
Wow. And so what's your message when you see Canadian, a lot of young people in particular will speak fondly of socialism, some university professors, even some politicians. So what's your what do you think when you see that? What's your message to people who are urging this?
Well, I think that in Canada, they have never experienced what is to really live in a socialist country. They believe that because, we get free healthcare, so we are socialists. Like, no, that's not real socialism. And look how the healthcare is run sometimes. Like, you really want this in every aspect of your life. Yeah. I know I don't. And the thing is that if you don't go through this, if you don't get the proper information, academia, I find that is very influenced by the left in Canada. All my friends that are still in university or attended university, they're always like, yeah, here is hard to speak against these ideas, against socialism, against left-wing ideology, because people will just jump on you. Professors will try to silence you even. So if you have the academia and the intellectual side, you're basically just brewing future socialists for the country. And that's something that actually Latin America experienced in many years before. And our academia actually was impacted by this same situation. The left knew how to penetrate in universities.
So what is your message for why socialism doesn't work?
My message
or what you've observed, like why do you think it fails all over the world?
Because it goes against human nature. That's my conclusion. Like, humans are individuals and we pursue what is good for us. Like no one is gonna do things completely without anything in exchange. We act according to our incentives. So if I'm having a bakery, I need to keep my bakery productive and I want profit. If you come here and you tell me, yeah, no, I think your bread is too expensive, in capitalism you have the option to go to another bakery. Because you have free market, you have opportunities. In a socialist country, people used to even have WhatsApp group chats to keep informed where you could find the bread.
Wow.
And they will sell it back in the day at any price, higher prices that you will normally pay for, and people had to buy it. Unless the government, when they realized it, they used to come to the bakeries and tell the baker, yeah, I don't like the price, so you need to lower your price. That's called price controls. And what happened is that then you don't have any bread. So in capitalism, you have the alternative of businesses competing with each other and giving you different options. In socialism, you have only a few options or you have none.
Right. And so in a market-based system, you have people competing, and if someone's getting too big of a profit margin, well, then there's the incentive for new companies to enter that market and undercut them a bit, and then you have it constantly whittling down to the point, ideally, where there's sort of enough for someone to make a profit and earn a living and so forth, but not so much that consumers are getting gouged.
You know what I loved about Canada when I first moved here? That a week after arriving, I went to a Costco. And I love getting so many things and products that in my country, it was normal to see empty shelves back then.
So was it culture shock when you went into a Costco for the first time and you could see food everywhere?
It was like a blessing. Like, it was like, wow, I'm not gonna have to do a bread line anymore. Like, that was what I was thinking. Like, I don't need to line up anymore in front of a supermarket.
Wow. That's amazing. One final question. When you think about Canada today and what you've seen over the past few years of that, are there any policies that have happened in Canada or that you're hearing about that concern you because they remind you of what you experienced in Venezuela? Well, honestly, it was mostly related to COVID. When that happened, when I saw the government shutting down businesses because they want to protect the public,
all that I thought was like, how many businesses are going to be able to survive? That's what crossed my mind. And when they pushed for the Emergency Act, only because some people were protesting in Ottawa and they make it seem like it was violent. Like, I live here in Ottawa. I live like 5 minutes walking from where these protests were happening. And I know what a violent protest looks like because I have been to some of those back in Venezuela.
Right.
And this didn't look anything like that. So if you have a government that is ready to call something like this an emergency, what can be next? Because when you pass an emergency act, you take the power and you are ready to use it how you prefer. That's dangerous for any democracy.
So is it fair to say that there was maybe a reasonable approach for government to handle, say, the pandemic and the protests, and you believe they went too far? Or
I believe they went too far, and I think this is common to see. It's not only in Canada, like many governments, they take advantage of crisis in order to take more control.
Right.
And that's why we need to be like aware of what is happening.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your experience of growing up in Venezuela, and appreciate what you're doing. Could you just tell us a little bit about Lola too?
Well, Lola is an organization that I support. We believe that that socialist distancing is the only social distancing that we actually need. And Lola is focused on promoting individual freedom, free market economy, and especially focusing on women. Like, if you go to many libertarian or conservative conferences, what you're gonna find is mostly men. And we wanna change that. We want to also tell people, you know what? Women's rights don't rely on the left.
Right.
Women's rights, that you can care about women's rights, and you can be a libertarian, you can be a conservative, and you can be an excellent political leader, and you don't have to praise or preach these leftist ideas to do so.
And Lola's Ladies of Liberty Alliance, correct? Okay, well, I encourage people to take a look at that, and thanks again for chatting with us for a few minutes today.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.